Good
Okay.
morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on where you are in the world this morning. I'm Maria Volpe. I'm a professor at John Jay College, where I also direct the dispute resolution program. These breakfasts are co-sponsored by the City University of New York Dispute Resolution Center at John Jay College of Criminal Justice and the Association for Conflict Resolution of Greater New York. I started these breakfasts after 9/11 to provide an opportunity for New Yorkers to come together, and we met in person at John Jay until COVID, till March 2020. Since April 2020, we have been meeting online. All of these sessions are recorded, and the recordings are posted on our websites, www.acr-gny.org, and the CUNY Dispute Resolution Center's website that we are still working on. Each month, these breakfasts are put together by a wonderful team, including Matthew Latimer, Nikki Borofsky, Emily Skinner, Chloe Choi, and myself. It's great to work with this wonderful team. We are so excited each month to have with us our colleagues who share with us timely information, interesting work that they're doing. And this month, we are so delighted to have with us a very dear colleague and friend, Rebekah Ratliff, who Nikki Borofsky will now more officially introduce. Nikki, take it away.
Thank you so much, Maria. It's always a pleasure to introduce people who I know and love very sincerely. And I've known Rebekah for many years now, and we are in for a treat today. Rebekah Ratliff is going to speak to us about exploring different roles during the mediation process. And she has played many of these roles. Currently, she is an international mediator and arbitrator with JAMS. And I can verify this because I've seen her in London, I've seen her in Paris, I've seen her in Atlanta, I've seen her in Chicago and New York, many places. She really is just a testament to being able to zoom around and actually get around and be present for all of the different conflicts that she helps to resolve. Importantly, she transitioned into mediation and conflict resolution from a very rich history as a commercial insurance claims professional, where she spent more than 25 years helping to evaluate, negotiate, and settle very complex global claims. And when you think about it, amongst my mediator colleagues, this is the person you always want to be sure is in the room, on the Zoom, on speed dial, because often it's the insurance companies who control a lot of the power that the parties have when they're trying to settle a dispute. Rebekah does so many things. I'm going to keep it as short as possible so we can get to her engaging and lively and interesting talk, which they always are. She is the first vice chair of the National Bar Association ADR section. She is a member of the ABA Dispute Resolution Section Council. She is an adjunct professor at Howard University School of Law, where she just popped in from teaching a class in person. We are very excited and honored to have her. And I just want to make a note that this does actually kick off Black History Month. So of course, we're honored to have Rebekah speaking here, but she could also kick off next month, Women's History Month. And I think that almost every month we could find a way for Rebekah to kick off the month as both a shining example and a pioneer of everything that all of these important communities and the intersectionality of them combine. So without further ado, Rebekah, the floor is yours. We look forward to hearing from you. We talked before, we encourage everybody to participate with questions. Rebekah's talk is kind of in 3 chunks, so we're going to try and let her get through a chunk and then maybe explore questions at the end of each section. But as always, feel free to pop your thoughts and comments and questions into the chat. And Rebekah is so dynamic, we'll figure out a way to get everybody's inquiries answered. Thank you so much, Rebekah. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Maria, and thank you, Nikki, both my close friends. Thank you very much. It's such an honor to be here with you this morning. I feel energized now. It's always nice to hear what people think of you. Sometimes when you're close to somebody, you just feel the love, but admiration is a different emotion around a friendship. And I'm very, very proud to be friends with both of you. So welcome this morning to everyone. Nikki hit on something really important. Insurance touches everything, and so does alternative dispute resolution. It's important to make that point. Every single place from cradle to corporation, dispute resolution or conflict resolution should exist. It touches absolutely every area of life, because conflict touches every area of life. And try as we might, it is very, very hard to avoid conflict. Even little children have arguments. And so this is a field that I'm very proud to work in. I will tell you from the very onset, my name is spelled the Hebrew spelling of Rebekah, and it means peacemaker. My name means peacemaker. So as a mediator, I am a mediator and arbitrator with JAMS, but as a mediator, I am doing what I was named to do, which I think is very powerful. I enjoy this work. I think it's very important because generally people don't want to be in dispute. People really don't want to be in dispute. And when I am in an opening, a joint opening caucus, the thing I say before I let everybody separate into private caucus is, you need to leave with this behind you today. And we'll talk a little bit about that. I have some personal philosophies around dispute resolution. I'll tell you, I have a psychology degree from the University of Illinois at Urbana. I am, as Nikki described, a veteran in risk management, former complex commercial insurance claims professional. I handled matters in almost all 50 states and internationally over my career. And then I reinvented myself as a mediator and arbitrator. And I do a lot of consulting in this space as well, because obviously there are efforts going on all over the world around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm just about as diverse as they come. I hit a few boxes in diversity, including I am an ADR professional, non-attorney, which I'm very, very proud of, and because it's my secret sauce, actually. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the roles. Nikki mentioned interdependency of the different roles, and I'll talk some about some skill sets and the psychology of this whole deal, because there really is a psychology to negotiating. So as we go through our talk, of course, okay, there we go. I was gonna say my slides aren't changing.
Rebekah, can I jump in just to to see if you can play your slides so that they're bigger for everybody and everybody can see them?
Oh yes, you're looking at, that's right.
We don't want all the secret sauce.
That's right. That's right. Let me see, especially not all at the same time. So this is, I'm supposed to put it in.
That's
there we go.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you. You know, I knew that didn't look right. So now you see why I keep Nikki around. Aside from her being such a good friend, she makes sure that I know when my slip is showing. So so here we go. So the objectives for today's conversation, we're going to talk a little bit about the psychology of negotiating, discover the interaction and application of personality styles. I'll talk a little bit about that. That's somewhat an exercise that we'll interact on as I get through some of the explanation. Discuss roles, staying in your lane. Sometimes when JAMS has me talk to our colleagues, some of the specific messaging to our judges, our former judges, is this is not, mediation is not a courtroom, and we don't have any power as mediators. So the caution is you may not, if you are a former judge mediator, you may actually alienate your the people who are before you if you are presenting as a decision maker in an authoritarian position, because that's not the role of mediator. So we'll talk about that some. Tips and reminders for successful facilitation at mediation. So negotiation, quite simply, non-adversarial communications and the exchange of information to find mutually agreeable outcomes. The goal is to navigate negotiables and non-negotiables in whatever context. If you're the mediator, it's your job to discern, to tease out, to probe, to ask questions, and to figure out what the parties before you want, what they need. And we will talk a little bit more about some tips just from my perspective on how to do that. Here's my disclaimer. Again, I am a former commercial insurance professional, so a lot of the perspective that I'm coming from is from that seat and that lens. So if it sounds like it's skewed to civil torts, it probably is, my talk. So ABCs of negotiating: agreement, bargaining, and compromise. And we'll talk about that in a little more details. My sources are identified at the end of the presentation. So analysis, negotiation is the diagnosis. That begins before you get to the table. The analysis should begin with hopefully briefs that have been submitted. In my world, I do handle a variety of insurance subject matter areas, but also some employment and some civil rights. So I want to have information on paper, and I want to have information from conversations that I've had with counsel prior to getting to the mediation table, because I'm trying to get in their heads before we get to the table, because what we have is influence on our side as facilitators. We are not the decision makers. We don't have any power. We don't have any authority as mediators, but we do get to leverage influence to the extent that we can. So power of suggestion, I'll talk a little bit more about that. So the analysis begins when you start getting information on the matter, and you read the brief that they send you. Always, if they send you information, and I always request information prior to a mediation, I read everything I get, so that when I show up, I have some perspective on what has gone on. And then I'd like to have conversations prior to the mediation, because I want to know if communications have been friendly or contentious. It's important to know that. I will tell you that in my past life, I have seen people jump over the table at each other. For an insurance company, that's an example that I'll give. It's a business decision. The negotiations are really a business decision. It's cost analysis. But if someone has been personally injured in some way, catastrophic or otherwise, there's emotion on that side. And it's my job as the mediator to diffuse any of the emotions around, that are impeding progress. So I'm trying to keep them at the table. So the analysis and the diagnosis of what happened, why it happened. And again, remember, I'm a former adjuster, so I am competent in the subject matter areas that I've seen over time to investigate, evaluate, negotiate. That's what an adjuster does. So case evaluation and negotiation is why I'm a mediator. When I decided to change the landscape of my career, those were the two pieces of my career as an insurance claims professional in commercial spaces that I took with me. Those are the skill sets, the transferable skill sets that I brought with me into mediation and arbitration. I understand negotiation, evaluation, and settlement from the standpoint of the payer. So that analysis and diagnosis is part of my fiber as a mediator. And then as I am starting to team with the parties on what the strategy is for going in and trying to get the matter resolved, I'm planning what my approach might be. Now, at the mediation table, that plan may change depending on who comes before me, the human condition that I observe when I'm there, because obviously as the mediator, this would be my first encounter, unless it's a second, maybe we're reconvening. But if it's my first experience with them, then I am planning, and everybody has come to me with a strategy, but I'm also coming to the table with some kind of strategy to one, engage them, to gain their trust, and to keep them at the table. So I'm constantly making decisions as the mediator around what's next. When somebody makes an outrageous demand, I don't blink. It doesn't shock me. What I know is a case is worth what it settles for. That's what I know. That's what I teach. I teach my law students, I teach the lawyers in the National Bar Association and other spaces where I am talking about negotiation skills and the art of negotiation. People sometimes want to pack up their stuff and leave early, but it's my job to keep them at the table talking and to remind them that, you know, it's a process. So again, the discussion, the communication, exchange of information. There's a dance that goes on, and I am the DJ. So I'm the conductor. I'm the person as the mediator who is going to facilitate the exchange of information and the understanding of what interests exist in the different rooms. I often remind, you know, as we're getting into the thick of things, I'll say when I'm trying to get them to trust me or to let me convey something or to let me craft a, you know, a rationale around their message, I'm reminding them that I'm the only person in all the rooms that day. So it may be, I mean, I do multi-party mediations but sometimes there's just a plaintiff and defense room, but I'm the only person in all the rooms. So I'm hearing things, although I may not know what they're going to pay, I may not know what they're going to take. I do have some orientation to how things are going, who the influencers are, what the interests are. And I'm constantly reminding them of the self-determination canon. There will only be a settlement if you agree to it. You have the power. You don't know what a jury will decide. So, you know, this is your golden opportunity. I'm reminding them as a mediator to, you know, to decide the outcome of your case. You have lived with this, a jury has not. So I'm constantly using my influence on them in order to move them along and to make progress during the day. So some themes that you'll see me go through in this presentation: people, problem, and process. So communication skills, there are, depending on what the subject matter is, there are going to be different layers of relationship. Now, it may be employer-employee. It may be store owner and invitee who maybe slips and falls. But it may be family members sometimes, even in civil matters, you'll see family members. So they are different types of relationships and different layers to the relationship. And part of conflict resolution or dispute resolution may be relationship repair. Because we know that there are different, you know, there's more than just mediation and arbitration. There's also, there are also other conciliation forums where you might see people as a dispute resolution professional and be trying to preserve a relationship maybe. So listening skills, and by the way, sometimes that relationship repair is in the employment context. So listening skills and determining interests, really important to employ those active listening skills. Be listening, be taking notes. I take a lot of notes. And I'll tell you, when I'm mediating, I use one of those pens. Remember those ink pens that have the 4 colors? So the defense, all of the communications that the defense is making, I write in black. All of the communications that the plaintiffs are making, I write in blue. And if there's something that they tell me is confidential and can't be shared, I put a little red C next to it. I always, before I leave a room, I confirm what they said to me, what they want conveyed, and what is confidential. Very important, because you will dismantle negotiations as a mediator if you share something in the other room that was not meant to be communicated. Now, I may be asking the parties to let me communicate something that's confidential later in the process, because in my discernment, I may know that this would help if I could share it at this point. Because remember, the right message at the wrong time is the wrong message. So timing is everything when you are conducting these hearings, these mediation hearings, and you're the person setting the temperature, really. So cultural competency is important. I'll talk on one of my slides about fairness a little bit. Fairness looks different for every person. And when I speak about cultural competency, I'm not only talking about ethnic cultures. I'm talking about life culture, what people are used to in their corporate lives, personally and professionally, to have some understanding about who the person before you is. If you can gain some depth of understanding in the time that you're with them, then you will be a more competent dispute resolution professional. And that means that you have to be patient and you have to do a lot of listening. Grab onto something that they mentioned, when they're talking to you. I always ask the lawyers in private caucus, can your client tell me, especially if it's a bodily injury, lawyers call it personal injury, but in the insurance world, it's bodily injury. If a person has bodily injury damages, I want to hear how it's affected their life, especially if they are significant damages. I want to hear, and I'll tell you, even if it's a strain or sprained back or something, whatever the injury is, that person takes it very seriously, no matter, again, how serious, or from soft tissue to broken bones, they've been injured, and depending on their motivations, they want money. And that's the only remedy in civil matters. Money and an apology, maybe. There are some off the beaten path things that people accept, like maybe, a donation to a charity. It depends on, what really what the facts are, what's going on. But I'm always keeping in mind that it's important to connect with the people who are there in front of me to resolve. So again, there are biases that exist, some unconscious or implicit biases, but there also are conscious biases. Sometimes I'll tell you, as an adjuster, I was there in my former life to negotiate and settle a matter, and I had people that didn't want to shake my hand. Now I'm the person there with the money. I'm the decision maker. What a lot of people don't know is if you have a commercial matter and you've got a defense lawyer and an insurance professional there, as mediators, it's important to know that 9 chances out of 10, that commercial adjuster is the decision maker, not the defense lawyer with them. And that is not something that is widely known. I've always been surprised to see the treatment of the claims professional sometimes. And obviously, I'm very careful about that as a mediator, because I know that the claims professional is probably the one there with the company money, and with very few exceptions. I was the person to negotiate with. I was the person. So getting through the process, what you want to do is you want to influence small concessions that will then turn into larger concessions, because what it does is, again, the psychology around negotiating. If a person becomes inclined to conceding and to compromising and to collaborating, remember, mediation is a collaborative forum for dispute resolution. If you can get them to agree to some small things, eventually, as the day progresses, you will get them to concede to larger things, because they're inclined, they're seeing that some progress is being made, that they're becoming more agreeable. And compromise really is the key to resolution. So if you can get people to compromise, the more you can get them to compromise, then things do progress from there. So Bargaining for Advantage is one of the books that I looked at for some presentation that I did last year. So it's important to separate people from the problem. And in some psych classes, some of you may have learned that when you're in an argument or a dispute in a one-on-one, it's best to attack the problem and not the person. You attack the behavior, not the person. And so in the negotiating world, it's important to separate people from the problem so that you don't attack the person. It's easier to communicate with someone with whom you can, distinguish what the problem is and what, maybe their intent is. So focusing on interests and not positions. If you focus on positions, in most cases, everybody is entrenched in their position. I've heard as a mediator, lawyers say, "I really like my case." And my response to that was, well, that's not really a surprise. That's not uncommon. Lawyers come in, they have built their case, they like their case. That's not a surprise. And as a mediator, that doesn't intimidate me. I know what my role is, and I'm there to help them find commonality. So consider multiple options to find mutual agreement. That's important. You got to be focused on the gains for the parties that are before you. And it's important to insist that the result, as much as possible, be based on some objective standard rather than something that is, you want to address the interest, but at the same time, in order to reach compromise, you usually have to find some common point that's objective that you can build on. So again, psychology around negotiating. These are some of the tactics that are used. Good cop, bad cop, or bluffing is used sometimes between the lawyer and maybe a corporate client that may be there in the room. Sometimes good cop, bad cop is used between the defense counsel and the insurance professional. There are also threats, but again, that's usually not an effective way to communicate. People don't like to be threatened. So again, you want to use the power of suggestion versus threats. Pressure, limited time opportunity, depending on what the motivations are, what time of year. Sometimes individuals are motivated to settle before Christmas, and sometimes corporations, depending on what they are trying to do, maybe they're being considered for sale. Depending on the condition of the person or the entity, there may be a time limit factor, a time limit component that is a motivator for reaching a settlement. Delay is a tactic, just stalling. When you see there's some type of pressure on the other side, people sometimes, or companies, will delay. This situation sometimes exists where a company is up against a and I'll fix that in a minute. I don't really like to use the words up against. And when I'm for the purposes of this presentation, I'll go ahead and say that. But when I'm in mediation, I never use words like opposing. I'll say the other side. I'm the facilitator. I'm the shepherd. I'm setting the temperature. So at mediation, I want to make sure that the words that I'm using, again, psychology, even from the mediator, the words that I'm using are really being used to influence. Words have meaning. I want to influence settlement. I want to influence compromise and collaboration. So I'll say, sometimes, big company, small person, and sometimes they have more power. So there's a power differential. There's a power imbalance. So the delay tactic sometimes is used in that type of situation. Scarcity, time deadlines for whatever. Could be trial is imminent. And depending on how things have gone with motions, one of the sides may be motivated to try to get it settled. Even may surprise some of you to know, but even from an insurance company standpoint, sometimes conversations are, this is a case to settle. Some cases you have to try, and the best lawyers will tell you that there are cases that, some cases they thought they would lose that they won, and some cases that they thought they would win, that they lost. So again, take it or leave it. The threat to walk out sometimes is used as a tactic in psychology. Didn't like that offer, didn't like that demand, we're leaving. And then, of course, as a mediator, my hope is to keep them at the table negotiating. I don't have any power to keep them at the table, but I will ask them, let me try something else, or, please, don't leave just yet. We're making progress. So again, influence, suggestion, expectation. So are there any questions? I'll stop here because we're getting ready to go into an exercise that I love, and personalities never disappoint. There's always something to learn about personality styles. But before we go into that, Nikki, anything in the chat?
Yeah, we have a couple of pointed questions. Lisa Pomerantz wants to know your views of the use of bracketing by parties in mediation.
I like bracketing. I'm a former claims professional. I like bracketing because I think that it has a place when it's appropriate, and it's got to be at the right time. If you wait too long, then the numbers don't work. I'll explain really quickly what bracketing is for those who don't know. Bracketing is basically a high-low strategy to indicate where a case might settle. So I'll use very, small and round numbers. Maybe the plaintiff says we'll go to 400 to 100 if you'll go to 400 to the defense. If your offer can be 400, then we'll demand 100. The indication is you add 400 and 100 is 500. The midpoint of that is 250. So the indication is this case can settle for 250. So that's how brackets are used. And I'm a fan of brackets, but some people are not. What I have seen, though, is that I have heard people say they don't like brackets, but they actually don't know how to use them. They don't understand the timing of it. They don't understand, because you gotta, again, you can get past a certain point and then the numbers don't make sense because you're too close to what you're willing to offer or too close to what you're willing to take to effectively use a bracket. So the short answer is that I am a fan of brackets when they make sense.
Excellent. Even for a non-lawyer, the "it depends" answer is always good. Because it always does depend, right? Another, just to kind of build on that a little bit, I think this is an interesting question from your perspective. Susanna asks, what do you think the best way is for a mediator to explain the adjuster's role? She asked to a plaintiff, but maybe to a plaintiff who might be in the room, or maybe even to any of the participants in a dispute.
Okay, so I have to do that a lot. And obviously I understand that better than most because I was an adjuster. So I explain to them, because, ideally you've had joint openings. And I'll say, I know a lot of people are moving away from joint opening statements. I'm still a big fan of that because mediation is collaborative. And now there are some situations where if you start out jointly with the plaintiff and the defense and all the parties in the room together, it's going to send everything down the toilet from the start. You don't want to do that. That's why I have the calls before we get to mediation with the lawyers, so that I know that, a joint opening is not a good idea in this situation. Every case is different. But sometimes when there is a joint opening, it's the opportunity for the plaintiff to hear not just from the defense counsel, but maybe from the adjuster, which I will say is rare. And that contributes to the mystery around the adjuster and what they're thinking. But as the mediator, I often explain the adjuster is here to execute on a business decision. They have a strategy. You see commercials where it says the insurance company wants to pay you as little as possible. That is not true. Now, this conversation, that sentence that I just said to you in this meeting, I don't say that at mediation because it sounds like I'm advocating for the insurance company or the adjuster. So, but what I explain is that the adjuster's position at mediation is one of a business decision. It's a business decision. I'm always happy if there are catastrophic damages, especially if the adjuster does speak. I always did. As an adjuster, if a person was really, injured, it was a huge impact, the damages or injury made a huge impact on their life, I would say, I'm sorry that this happened to you, and we're here negotiating in good faith. You don't always get that from an adjuster. Again, adjusters are people too. And so those individual people appear however they appear. I am a compassionate person. I'm an empathetic person. And I care that something happened. But remember, everybody has the same set of facts, but they see them differently. That's the reality of a dispute. So same set of facts. So that's what I explain to a plaintiff that, is looking like they feel like the adjuster is against them, or even if the plaintiff attorney sometimes is the person who is, saying that adjuster, blah, 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 what I'll say is, remember, here's what's going on here. And then, I'm the person who tries to bring a little balm and explain what the roles are. Again, lots of focus on the roles to try to help the participants understand the purpose that everybody's there, but they're here. The adjuster is here executing on a business decision. There was a strategy back at that insurance company, but they're here to negotiate, especially if it's an in-person matter. And that's one of the things that I'm a fan of virtual mediation, because I can sit anywhere and do this. I can mediate from anywhere now. But as a former adjuster, I appeared at most mediations because I really liked to make that personal connection. I think it's important because, the plaintiff side was emotional, to show up. And, so that is a little more difficult, but if the adjuster is on Zoom, they still showed up. So I try to turn everything into a positive. I know you didn't like what you heard, but they're here. They have shown up. They didn't send a representative. They didn't send an independent adjuster that doesn't work for the company. They are actually here engaged. And sometimes the plaintiff lawyer will ask, is the adjuster speaking in the room? Now, if you were asking about me, when I was an adjuster, the answer was going to be, oh, she's controlling it. She's controlling. Yeah, Rebekah is controlling the negotiations. But sometimes the defense counsel will ask, what's going on in the other room? Who are the influencers? Because sometimes a plaintiff will show up with a family member. If a person has significant injuries, sometimes a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a spouse will show up, or the mom or the grandparent, someone who they trust, somebody who's comforting, to them. And sometimes that person is an influencer in the room, and the mediator has to manage that. So lots of different things can be going on. Lots of different moving parts can be going on at a mediation. Any other questions?
So you actually synthesized and answered a couple of questions in your response to that one question, specifically about the usage of joint sessions with the parties. I want to ask one more question, which is a huge question, but then give you a chance to pivot to the people part, which is interesting. Okay. But Steve Phillips asked, and this is really kind of digging into your very unique and special and sought after experience in the insurance industry. Steve asks, how do you address situations where there's a disagreement between the adjuster and their insured with regard to the settlement value? Like the insurance company wants to settle and the insured or the company doesn't want to consent.
Okay, so that is a huge question, but here's the short answer. The insurance contract says that the company controls the defense, period. Now, in a medical malpractice, in a professional liability case, you go back to the policy, there's usually a consent to settle policy clause. The consent to settle clause, especially in medical malpractice, is intended to give the medical practitioner some say in the defense of the matter. But if it also usually says in the language that if you don't consent to settle and we could have settled for a lower amount, you take the hit. So there's that. But in general liability matters, I'll just use that as an example. Again, the insurance company controls the defense. So if there can be a disagreement, but the insurance company makes the decision. And the sticky part about that is that there's a tripartite relationship between the insurance company, the defense lawyer, and the policyholder, who's the client. The insurance company hires the defense counsel, but that counsel represents the policyholder, period. So you can imagine sometimes conflicts that come up depending on how things escalate or facts that exist, or, so that's why these decisions are made very deliberately around, those realities and of course laws and statutes. But yeah, if there's a disagreement, I don't want to get too far off into the rabbit hole, but yeah, if there's a disagreement between settlement value and general liability matters, specifically, the insurance company controls the defense.
Thank you. I couldn't resist just digging into your expertise for that brief moment, because you have a really unique perspective as a mediator who's spent, times in really powerful seats of different chairs at mediations. Let me put a pause. There's fast and furious questions that are coming, which is great. But I'd love to have you proceed with your next section, because it's a really interesting one, and we'll hopefully get a chance to answer everybody's questions soon.
Okay, great. Sounds good. And let me make this point too. Every case is different, and every insurance company is different. So the answers that I'm giving in this meeting are my perspective, my words, my experience. So I just want to make sure, yeah, this isn't, I'm not giving away all the secrets. I'm I'm actually answering the questions that are being presented before me to the best of my ability from my own experience. Okay, so people are people. Everybody's showing up in their human condition, whatever that may be on a given day. Personal best can vary from day to day. And I think we all learned that getting through the pandemic. So who do you think you are? So these are personality styles. A lot of you may be familiar with the DISC personality assessment. There are others. Was it Myers-Briggs? There are a bunch. There are a bunch of different personality assessments, but the usefulness of these assessments are that they help as you're figuring out who's in front of you, even just in everyday life. I can talk to somebody for about 5 minutes. I mean, Nikki will tell you I'm pretty discerning about people. I can talk to somebody for 5 minutes and know what I'm looking at. So I'll make a point. Opposites attract. Usually, if you fit in the D quadrant, you're usually married to, or your significant other is an S. You are a combination usually of these personality styles. The D personality is outgoing and task oriented. The I personality is outgoing and people oriented. The S personality is reserved and people oriented, and the C personality is reserved and task oriented. As we go through this quick exercise, we're going to take a few minutes, and I'm going to ask some people to come off mute and weigh in just to make a point. So the D personality, and let me say, there's no good or bad personality style. It is what it is. And again, most of us are some combination of 2, 1, 2, 3. Probably very few people are all 4, but I will tell you that I'm a combination of about 3 of these, and it's because of my different work experience and my life experience, my background, my parents. I'll tell you, I'm the daughter of a pastor and a nurse, so I come from a service-oriented family. I belong to a service sorority. So so people are made up of the things they see and hear, their experiences, their professional and personal backgrounds, and sometimes trauma that they've been through as well. So it's important to realize that you don't always know what you're looking at. And I'll say to you what I said to my son when he was growing up. Be careful about comparing yourself to other people, because you're comparing your inside to their outside. You never really know the inside of another person, as you encounter them on any given day. So this is the exercise. Everybody, describe a glass bottle Coca-Cola. That's your assignment. And in the interest of time, I'll give you 2 minutes to do it. And I'll tell you normally what we do in this exercise is what I do is I divide, if I'm in person, I divide people into 4 groups. The 4 you just saw, the outgoing and task-oriented, outgoing, people-oriented, reserved and people-oriented, reserved and task-oriented. I asked them to go into different corners of a room. And then I asked them to come up with these descriptions quietly so that the other people in the room can't hear. And that somebody is a scribe, so they're writing down what the descriptions are. So I'm going to do this as best I can. I think we have about 138 people on the line. But I always, when we're on Zoom, I always have to be creative in how I make these points. So again, keep writing. Describe a glass bottle of Coke.
So I've popped that into the chat. Everybody should feel free to describe. So in fact, we have a bottle of poison that's coming in.
Oh, are they chatting? Okay.
Yep, I'll
Okay.
read them off. Sleek, and it is an interesting drink. Hard, warm, closed, fattening, and refreshing. And if anybody wants to unmute themselves and join in with a live voice, we encourage you.
Yep.
No harm meant to Atlanta people. Elegant lettering, feminine form, undulating, model dark, lipstick red, iconic, global. Somebody said sugar.
Can opener.
What was that? That was a live answer?
And where is the can opener?
Need a can opener?
A bottle opener.
Oh, right. Bottle opener.
Hand-shaped bottle with a metal lid containing a black liquid labeled Coca-Cola. Classic, nostalgic, delicious. From Matt York, I'm outing him.
Okay.
An anonymous Zoom user says body of a sexy woman. Youth, opaque, business, tall, full hourglass shaped bottle of dark brown cola.
Yep.
A container made of glass with a red label and a bottle top filled with Coca-Cola. Let's share it. Unhealthy, retro. The bottle holds Coke inside, which is shaken and about to explode like people's emotions. A diabetic's nightmare. The bottom looks too rounded to be glass, but top requires glass. Somebody says, not Pepsi. A foot tallish bottle with a slender neck, slightly bulging middle, and slightly wider base. It has a metal top. There's a red and white label in the middle. It says Coca-Cola in fancy lettering, has brown liquid inside.
Okay, so we're going to stop there. So let me tell you. Now I want you to respond in the chat if I'm right about this. People who identified in the I category as outgoing and people-oriented, those are the people who, and again, there may be a combination, but if I is part of your personality style, you would have been some of those that said closed, fattening, refreshing, body of a sexy woman, slender, slightly bulging in the middle. That would be an I response. Am I right about that?
We have one 100% correct response.
There you go. Okay. Yeah. So elegance, model, iconic, global, classic, nostalgic, delicious, red label. Some of those responses I'm sure came from mostly the C personality style. Am I right about that? And you could be C, you could be CD, you could be CI, you CS. I mean, there may be a combination, but not looking at anybody and just hearing the responses. I'm very confident that those responses came from some people who identify with the C personality style. And I didn't write down every single, I don't know if you got a response.
People are quiet, but they can kind of.
People are quiet. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or part of I think they're identifying as part of them, as you said.
Part
before.
of them. Yeah. Might have been CS. Yeah. Okay. So really the point is, again, and then the D personality style might be poison, unhealthy, might be, again, combinations between C and D. But usually I would be surprised if any I anybody that identifies in the I quadrant would put poison and unhealthy. So usually what happens if this is especially in person, the I personality style quadrant makes up some kind of song, something. So again, we asked, who do you think you are? Who are you? These personality styles are important to consider because they identify, how people interact, how they are received, and how they also put themselves out there. And again, D personality style, general descriptions: dominant, direct, demanding, decisive, determined, doer. The I personality style, outgoing. And the other thing is, I will say, no matter how I give the instructions, some people feel like, they don't want to identify, especially if their name is going to pop up in the chat, because they don't want to be labeled. So that may be the lack of communication. So I don't want to push it. Some people just don't want to be labeled. And so they're careful about, identifying in the chat. But I will say, the I personality style is so outgoing and, again, influencing, inducing, interactive, impressive. That was the personality style that said 100% correct in the chat, because that's the person who is social and, willing to put themselves out there. And, so even the reactions, the responses, and the descriptions are consistent with what I know to be personality style characteristics. And again, this is not intended to be a label. This exercise is intended to empower you and to give you some information that you might not have. There's you can take the DISC test for free online. There's actually a free test that you can take, but it will help you be better at interacting with people, because you can better discern what you're looking at and what you're hearing. Some people appear to be, you've had friends or people that you meet even in your professional life, and you say this person is hard to read. That's usually the S personality. And the S personality style is very uncomfortable being confronted. They're usually quiet and hard to read, but if you confront them, if you push them in a corner, they come out mean. And it's because they're very uncomfortable being put in a position where they have to respond when they didn't choose to respond. So important. The C personality style, cautious, calculating. This is a person who is contemplative, usually very detail-oriented personality style. So, as a mediator, it's important for me to understand what I'm looking at, who's in front of me, why they're communicating the way they are. Here are their motivations. What do you want? The D is motivated by results. The I is motivated really by having fun, interaction, really thrives on that. So enthusiasm. The S is concerned with and motivated by support. The C is concerned, that's the Y. They are motivated by accuracy. It's important to know it, to understand that D wants to get it done. The I wants social recognition. The S wants to get along, and the C wants to get it right. And those are motivations that influence the way people negotiate. It's what they need out of the negotiations. This has been I've been teaching personality styles, with the DISC model specifically, for over 20 years. And it's very, very consistent. And again, there's no right or wrong. It just is what it is. And people are pretty consistent. I will say, you may be a little different in your personal versus professional environment. It's kind of, again, that's where the combination comes in, where there's a little shift maybe because you're more relaxed in your natural environment at home with your family. So, art of negotiating. So again, the art, what you're trying to do is get the parties to agree on anything. So as a mediator, I'm trying to find points in common that I can communicate back and forth. I'm working through perspectives. I am acknowledging interests from one room to the next, and I'm facilitating the compromises where possible. Small compromises first that develop into larger compromises. And again, there are ways to communicate your interests and intentions to influence a positive outcome. And our goal is equitable outcomes. Again, you have to understand that trust has to be earned, and this is a process. So the mediator should not impose their will. The mediator's job is to continue working, keep them at the table, help them make progress. So the mediator, again, should be a subject matter expert, is a facilitator, and also a shepherd of the process. Again, so going back to the exercise we just saw, personality styles. I hope that exercise with the styles was helpful, because I promise if you employ that, it will change the way you see people in front of you in these in the different contexts. So again, different circumstances, different inclinations, they change over time as you get older. Gender, culture, power relationships that I mentioned earlier, getting the parties to agree on money can be different from getting parties to agree on something else, something sometimes non-monetary. People show up at mediation sometimes with damages you cannot see, not readily visible, but you know, they've been affected in some way emotionally by what has occurred, and it may be based on their background. Again, I mentioned trauma and the part that it plays. I'll also say that if you've ever read the 5 love languages, that you also understand that that can be a component of Chapman is the, I think it's Gary Chapman is the author, but your personality style, your love language, all goes into who you are, the things you've seen. You can't unsee what you've seen, you can't unhear, and neither can the parties in front of you. And so it's, you know, we are all, again, coming to the table with our biases and the things that that we need when we're engaging these negotiations. So, you know, the paths to resolution are negotiation, mediation, and trial. Of course, there can be arbitration, which is an adjudicative process, but non-adversarial communications and exchange of information can be in a situation where it's either pre-litigation. Negotiation can also happen in litigation, and it can get resolved. And what we know is that most cases that come to alternative dispute resolution, I want to say like the number now statistically is 98% of cases that that actually go to mediation or dispute resolution, some form of intermediary forum or platform. They settle. 98% settle. Mediation is a collaborative opportunity, saves time, money, and stress. And trial, of course, we know is more adversarial. But these are all ways that people choose, and sometimes they're forced. Obviously, if you can't settle into continuing, the litigation escalates, and you end up in front of strangers who decide your case. So, as a mediator, I'm always trying to keep them at the table. So, let's see, make sure. So hit the problem. Any questions? Anybody want to say anything after the personality interactive exercise?
I think there was some just general questions about, you're not sitting there giving this disc analysis to the parties. It just informs your thinking. I think I just wanted to I think clarify that because
oh yeah, that's important. Oh yeah, thank you. no, that's a really important. No, this is my knowledge that I'm applying when these people are in front of me. I'm interacting with them. I'm asking questions, and I'm establishing trust by having conversations, focusing in on some things that they said as the day goes on. But pretty early, I can figure out what I'm looking at. Sometimes, people become more relaxed during the process, during the day. So it's, I'm not looking to label people. So absolutely not. I am not administering any kind of personality assessment. It is just that I have this knowledge. It's a tool. Yeah. It's a tool that I have, and that I, again, in keeping with the psychology of negotiating, there's a clinical aspect to what I know, and what I do, and it's been very helpful to me. I won't use the word empowering, because I don't want to give off that I feel like I have power. And I'll say this too, I'm an arbitrator as well, and people have asked me, which do you prefer, mediation or arbitration? I prefer mediation. People are surprised to hear me say that, because an arbitrator has more power. But I enjoy being in mediation because the parties decide. I think it's important for them to craft their own settlement, and for me to be the facilitator of that. Again, I'm a peacemaker by nature, and I'm named peacemaker, Rebekah. So for me, it's more gratifying to be the shepherd in a process where the people who care the most about the case get to decide the outcome. So yeah, that was it, Nikki. No questions?
Let's have you move on, because we're, I want to make sure you get through your whole thing, and then we'll pick up any questions at the end if we have time.
Sounds good. So fairness. I mentioned before, fairness standards vary based on beliefs, personal personality styles, personal professional experiences, and other factors. So important to have some understanding of cultures, verbal and non-verbal. I communicate with a lot of people. I'll tell you, I came out of college and took a sign language class. I'm fluent in Spanish. I love communicating with people. And I know how important it is. We discovered, some of us who hadn't thought about it during COVID, how important communication and interaction is for people. So again, managing biases and other influences are all what I consider to be part of my role in a mediation, to make sure that everybody feels like they're being treated fairly in these environments. So the approach, when you have a dispute, the approach that to consider is around what you can do, what they may do, and what a third party can do. When we were in, before we started recording, somebody was talking about, really trying to navigate the reality of sometimes there being a third party who may have an influence on the ADR process. It was a very brief statement, but I said bingo when the person mentioned that, because we also have to remember that sometimes there are outside influences that enter the mediation room and into the negotiations. And they can impede the negotiation. So 6 foundations for negotiating real quick. The book is Bargaining for Advantage. You'll see the citation at the end. But bargaining styles, avoidance. So you can either avoid it, and usually there's no resolution to that. Compromise, which is obviously optimal. Accommodation, sometimes you just give in. Competition, you can just give a person a run and see who wins. And then collaboration, obviously, compromise and collaboration are 2 key focuses in mediation. And your goals and expectations, authoritative standards and norms is mentioned. Relationships, sometimes you're trying to repair a relationship or manage damage that's been done. Other parties' interest is something that has to be a focus in mediation. And then leverage, and we'll explore just real briefly. Leverage is a dynamic that's a time-sensitive factor based on perception. What's important to people? You can't leverage something against me that I don't care about. So it's important to understand, again, what do people feel like they have to win or lose? For whom is time a factor? It might be time at the during the mediation day. I usually establish in joint openings, everybody's here for the duration, right? Nobody has anywhere to be. Or it could be time as a factor. I mentioned a little earlier, some people want to get money right before Christmas. Or some people are trying to buy a house, or whatever a person's motivation is, whatever they need or whatever they want is a factor that can have a time component to it. And then the question, can I gain control over something that the other party needs, is a consideration in leverage. So the process, I'm going to whiz through here. And again, I'll mention some of the roles. So negotiators toolbox, again, verbal and non-verbal attention, knowing when to lean in, lean forward, body language, persuasion, making connection, gaining that trust, negotiation, compromising, and having insight into another's needs is how, as mediators, we help to facilitate compromises. So know your role as a mediator. We're a facilitator, should be a subject matter expert. It's hard to help people reach a conclusion or a resolution if you don't have any idea what they're talking about. If you don't know the jargon, if you don't know the terms of art, review the facts and info. If they send you something, look at it, make sure that you ask questions in pre-hearing calls. I always suggest pre-hearing calls. Know what questions to ask. If you don't know what questions to ask, it's hard to do reality testing. Know the players. Again, that's where the personality styles, if you can understand personality styles a little better than you do now, that will be helpful to you. Discern the interests of the other parties, do reality testing, review the facts and evidence, whatever is submitted to you. And again, oh, I see I put know what questions to ask. That's really important. So yeah, I will definitely emphasize that and reiterate knowing what questions to ask, how important that is. Discern parties' interests and look for points in common. Really, really important. So here's little wrap up, but I'll give you roles in order to just kind of figure out where this applies. You know, you have the mediator, and we've already said the mediator is a facilitator and shepherd of the process. Defense counsel, I'll give an example again. Usually my examples are going to be largely based on civil torts or insurance related matters, but defense counsel may have the policyholder in the room and may have an insurance adjuster in the room. It could be a multi-party case, but let's, you know, just assume there isn't. But all of these people are using some level of psychology or, you know, because of what they want. And sometimes it may be unconscious. But for instance, the insurance adjuster has already had conversations at the insurance company. They know what they come with a range. And so that's why I said, you know, when you see these commercials, you know, they're trying to pay as little as possible. We are in the insurance industry, just as lawyers are in the legal industry and insurance industry. Licensed professionals operate around ethics. There are ethics rules that exist and apply, and so they have a range. You know, the adjuster is going to come with the range for what the value is, and that valuation is based on the facts and lots of other different factors, laws and statutes, precedent, maybe a jury verdict reports that, you know, look to see what this type of case may settle for in a certain venue. Lots of considerations. So it's, you know, it's not that they're trying to pay as little as possible for companies who are reputable, but they have a strategy, just like the mediator has a strategy, the defense counsel and the insurance professional has a strategy, and then the plaintiff counsel also has a strategy. They have a client that you know, they're trying to pull a win for their client, and they have influencers, and we've talked a little bit about who that might be, sometimes family members. So as a mediator, guide, don't decide. My suggestion is that you do a pre-hearing prep and that you listen to learn and double check for accuracy before you convey messages. So now you know my secret. My mom, in addition to being a nurse, was a poet, and so I kind of see things in rhyme and creativity. Trust is a must. Build the relationships, and the reason I put the S there is because whatever people are before you, you are building a relationship as a mediator with everybody that's in front of you, because you don't know all the dynamics. And they do. So because you don't know the dynamics, and I was trained to not assume anything in my mediation training. You must always be honest and be patient. Stay in your lane. Again, facilitator, and don't rush the process. Nudge, don't judge. So confidentiality and self-determination are two the canons at mediation. Very, very important to never step on the self-determination canon, because mediation it works because the parties get to decide. It is my job to keep them at the table. I don't get to decide the outcome. That's the magic of mediation. And as a mediator, I am constantly reminding them that I don't decide, they do. So it's really important. So discern and adjourn. So I don't declare impasse unless they tell me to. I declare that it's adjourned if we don't settle. If it settles, I make sure that they don't get out of there without some type of memorandum of settlement with essential terms that lays out what's been agreed to. Because sometimes people leave out of there and they go somewhere, and if they haven't signed anything, then it's, you know, it's easier to forget about an agreement when you haven't signed anything. But I want to make sure that we capsulize what's been agreed to, the time frame for payment, etc., any non-disparagement, whatever the agreement is that the lawyers want to memorialize, it's on that document. And again, my psychological power of suggestion philosophy is don't declare an impasse. If I adjourn, the thought is this can still settle, and then I follow up to see if I'm right. Immediately, I follow up. If it doesn't settle at mediation, sometimes people just need a little time to think. Sometimes things fall apart, but I try to keep them at the table as long as I can. And if I'm unable to do that, then I will tell them, I'm here to help you get this resolved. I believe it can get resolved. Remember, I'm the only person who was in all the rooms, and we keep trying. And generally, obviously, everybody out there, ADR practitioners, do what you want, but for a reasonable amount of interaction after mediation or a reasonable amount of time, I don't charge anything additional. That's how you get repeat clients. So here are my sources. The DISC personality assessment, you'll see the book's personality styles. Got that information from Robert Rome, and then the 2 books. And I appreciate being with you today. I am happy to answer any additional questions. Thank you. Thanks for having me, Maria and Nikki. Thank you to the whole team.
Thank you so much. There are a couple little questions. I just wanted to, you just mentioned again the notion that you're the only one in all of the rooms. And there was a question that was asked by Tsonfat about whether that means that you only do caucus, or you also only do private sessions, or you do a mix. Can you explain a little bit, expand a little bit more about what you mean by that comment and what your practice is?
Thank you. Yes. So I'm a fan of joint caucus and then splitting into private caucus. That's what I prefer. And most of the time with the kinds of cases that I see, it makes sense. But where the negotiations and communications have been adversarial, sometimes it just doesn't make sense. I'll start out the mediation in private caucus and go to, from room to room in the beginning, then greet everybody and then get started that way. So I do a combination. Whatever makes sense is what I do, but my preference is always to have joint caucus. But once you have joint caucus and you separate the parties into their the rooms that they'll be in for the mediation, for the duration, then I'm going back and forth. But remember, whether or not there's been joint caucus, except for seeing each other maybe at the lunch at the lunch breakfast, buffet or lunch buffet, they're not going to be together anymore to communicate. So I'm the person communicating the messages from room to room. And so I'm the person who is getting the information that's either shareable or confidential. But I am the one responsible for accurately conveying those messages to try to help bring the parties closer together to settle. I never say bring them, it settles somewhere in the middle. It doesn't. A case is worth what it settles for. And again, I've been published to say that. That's what I teach, is wherever the agreement ends up is the settlement. And it can be very, very hard to predict because the defense side normally doesn't tell me what they're willing to pay, and the plaintiff side normally doesn't tell me what they're willing to take until we get to the very end of the negotiations where actually a settlement can be made. So is that make it a little more clear?
I think that helps for me, and I hope it helps for everybody. Oh, I want to get a little kind of administrative question. Are you willing to make the slides available to share?
Yes. So the slides, the slides that second set that I sent this morning, you have those.
Yep.
And I know the presentation is going to be shared on the website, so the slides will show up there, but yes. Yep.
Yes. Okay. So, and then kind of flurrying from that, I just want to send a note to everybody about the very important aspect of attributing properly anything that you do use. And somebody said they would like to adopt and incorporate your beautiful your beautiful poetic trust is a must, nudge, don't judge, but with attribution. So I think
Please,
that,
please,
yeah, I
because
think,
that's original. Yeah.
yeah,
That's why this slide is still up.
yeah. And I think that's also so important because for me, this isn't about Black History Month. This is about future of of professionals. Black African American month and year and future.
Yes.
And what it's been really great, and there have been people responding amazingly to all of the great insights and comments that you've shared with us. And it really is all about amplifying your message and sharing your path. One of the things that's come up in a few people's questions is how does age, background, the fact that you might not be an attorney impact the process of mediation? I was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit.
Absolutely. So I have been in this space now for more than 30 years. And because I'm a former commercial claims professional, I have seen more subject. I guess I didn't actually mention my subject matters. So I'll do that. My subject matter areas over the years, again, more over 25 years on a claims desk, auto and trucking, commercial premises liability, products, construction, medical malpractice, assisted living facility and nursing home, so elder care. I did some ERISA cases. I also managed, evaluated, investigated public entities, so school boards and municipalities, and what else? And because insurance touches everything, there was some D&O that touched me, wrote alongside on some employment cases because of employer liability matters. And I think that's kind of that's my subject matter. Those are my subject matter areas in a nutshell. But again, I have seen just about anything liability. And now again, as a mediator, I've handled, in addition to insurance subject matters, employment and civil rights as well. So to answer the question, I think that was a question really around equitable inclusion as a diverse professional and maybe what I've experienced. I will tell you as a non-lawyer, the speed bump, that was a speed bump at first, but it's developed now years later into my secret sauce that I'm not a lawyer, because my subject matter expertise is so extensive and it's undeniable. I'm not a lawyer, but I am a law professor at Howard University School of Law. Howard is world acclaimed. And I designed insurance curriculum for the School of Law at Howard. I teach that class in the spring. And my background, my mentor calls me a constellation. He says the constellation that you are, there's a clinical aspect to what you do in ADR. He said you have a psych degree, again, from the University of Illinois at Urbana. I'm a risk management professional for over 25 years, and I'm a dispute resolution professional. So that's quite a combination, walking into a mediation room, talking to people, and helping them move on with their lives, really. So it's, the way you get over a speed bump is to keep your foot on the gas. And that's what I've done. So to those of you who may be starting out as a diverse professional in the ADR area, I will tell you to just keep moving forward. The sun comes up every morning. And if you see the sun, it's like Les Brown said, if you can look up, you can get up, and you will be knocked down probably, because the saga continues with diverse professionals making our way. It is not, we are not as, the selection of diverse neutrals is just not, there's a lack of representation. It mirrors the lack of representation in law and in insurance, and that's our reality. But we don't need to base, we have a whole generation coming up of new dispute resolution professionals who don't bow to tyranny. And I'm always careful not to sound like, I'm complaining or I'm a victim. I'm not. I wear my role as I feel like I'm somewhat of a pioneer in my space. So very few, people with my specific skill sets. So I like to be underestimated. You know me, Nikki.
I know. You're the Liam Neeson. You have a very special set of skills.
I have a very special set of skills. Yeah, and I just, that's what, you can only build on your strengths. I know what my areas of opportunity. I'm constantly staying, with continuing education, staying cutting edge. But I have had an amazing, I'm having an amazing ride, and Nikki has been part of that. And I just, I appreciate everything, all of the resources that have been around me in this ADR career. And so I just want to encourage people who are new to it, new to ADR, to just keep pushing.
Well, thank you so much. I want to use the last, we usually stop at 10. Rebekah has said she's available for maybe 10 or 15 minutes afterwards to hang around. I just wanted to close by saying, I hope, and I think you'll, if you review the chat when you're looking through the notes, you'll feel the inspiration and power that your presentation has given to everybody who is attending. It's really just phenomenal to have leaders like you who come from unique paths and are really, killing it in dispute resolution, or maybe peacemaking in dispute resolution. But your parents were very prescient in naming you as a peacemaker.
How about that?
And I just want to say that, I've experienced firsthand and in person you working with the African Caribbean Insurance Network and
Yes.
the Women's Supper Club of Insurance globally. And so this really is, you're an important leader in a global movement to really build and strengthen and broaden the understanding and use of really high quality dispute resolution throughout really important industries. And we talk a lot about who the change makers can be. Coming from the insurance world, you have a lot of power to help move the lever and bring meaningful impact and movement in a lot of different places. So, my love session is not over, but I will press pause and ask anybody who didn't get a chance to have their question voiced if they want to raise their hand or pop anything in the chat. There've been so many words of praise that if there were questions in there, I might have lost them. So in our remaining few seconds, if there's anybody that has a question or would like to come on live and share something.
So,
yes, Maria.
Rebekah,
Yes.
I'm sure that there are those who wonder how you made the transition from insurance to mediation. That's always a question for people in the field. How do people break in? What was it like for you? I wonder if you could share some of your wisdom now that you can look back on your career. How did you do it?
So I will tell you, and that's an important question, Maria, because I have a personal board of directors, some people call it. I have mentors. And one of my mentors is Judge Gino Brogdon. And some of you, if you watch the TV, the station, whatever station it is in your area, in the United States that has the TV judges, Judge Gino Brogdon was the personal injury court judge, and he is my mentor. And I used him a lot in mediation when I was on a commercial claims desk. And he said to me, he said, Becky, I just have to say this to you. He said, I see how you handle these matters. And, because I've known him for years now. And he said, you're doing great work here as a commercial claims professional, getting these cases settled. I see the empathy that you apply as the insurance professional. And he said, you should be the mediator. He said, you are doing great work, but you're living beneath your skill sets, is what he said to me. And it just changed my life. I hadn't really thought that non-lawyers could be mediators and arbitrators. I hadn't thought about it, hadn't asked that question. But then I started looking into it and went and got my certification. In Georgia, it's considered a licensure. I know in some states It is not, but in Georgia, it's a license. And that conversation changed my whole world. And it was time for a change. I enjoyed the work that I did as a claims professional. And I'll mention, I handled cases in almost all 50 states, so I understand venues. And I also, for CNA, at one point in my career, I was a global consultant, so I handled international matters as a claims professional. So I brought this rich experience in all these different subject matters to the ADR world. And I understand evaluation, case evaluation, and negotiation from the standpoint of the payer. So I have, some influences and my knowledge and my body of work that I actually, there were dots connecting that I didn't see. I didn't see this career coming, but I feel really, really blessed. So again, have mentors, somebody who will think with you, somebody who will speak with you. Can be outside of your industry if you come from a different industry than law, or obviously as a lawyer. Have people who are willing to speak on your behalf. I'm a law professor at Howard, adjunct, because one of my colleagues and friends acted as a sponsor for me and spoke my name in a room where I was not. And one of the things that I need to make clear too about diversity, equity, and inclusion and the ally word. The word ally, I've been published to say, ally is a verb. It's a noun in the dictionary, but in this context, it's a verb. Getting me in the room is one thing, but if I'm in the room and I don't have a plate and I can't eat, what's the point? So the point really is, if you want to be an ally, if you are an ally, if you're trying to help someone get into this space, then it's going to take more than just having a conversation or even introducing them to somebody. I'm asking that people personally share their platform of privilege with people who are looking, someone that you can put your name behind. The other thing is, when somebody speaks your name and advocates for you, you need to be worthy of it. So it's, you have to deliver. My mentors, sometimes you think you can't do anything for a mentor, but you need to stand ready in case you can. If there's ever something that you can do, then you figure it out and you do it for a mentor. But so what I'm describing again is relationship and mutual benefit and reciprocal, duties. So it's relationship, having a mentor, doing the work. You heard I'm the first vice chair of the ADR section in the National Bar Association. I came in working for the American Bar Association. I was in the dispute resolution section. I was the co-chair for 3 years of the diversity committee, and I sit on the council now for the dispute resolution system. I have put on lots of programs. I do lots of publishing. So Maria, that's part of the answer as well, is I do the work to stay visible. And I'm a person who just believes that I'm here as a connector. I'm here to be of service, and whether that's through mediation or whether that's through mentorship, or whether that is, that's my life, is to be of service. I'll also mention, if you are also a person who feels like you're of service in this world, be discerning. It's okay to be discerning, because I will also just say honestly that sometimes there are predators out there. So you do have to be careful, and I'm conscious of that as well. But my heart is to serve. And if you are sowing good seed, you can't lose.
Well, on that note, I think that is a wonderful place for us to now pause, adjourn the formal recording of this session. Thank Rebekah from the bottom of our hearts wholeheartedly for a really, truly wonderful presentation. Rebekah, I'm so happy that you've been able to spend the last hour and a half with us here this morning to share your experiences and to shed light on how this process works for you and what people can draw from it for their own experience. As we know, lived experience is so important in this
Yes.
field, and no one can be you, and none of us can be each other completely, but we do take pieces that resonate with us to make a difference and to grow and learn on our own journey. So on that note, thank you again. And Nikki, if you can turn
Thank
off
you.
the recording. As we said, Rebekah can spend a few minutes with us. We will completely sign off by 10:15 at the absolute latest. But if there's anyone who has an